I've just discovered one of the most damaging species in all Star Wars, and it's Porgs. Hello and welcome to Vault Holocron, and wow, I've just come across something crazy today. Porgs, the little cute birds from The Last Jedi, are far from innocent and harmless. They are uncontrollable pests, and they bring death. Well, that is a little exaggerative, as I doubt any sentient species will be fearing extinction by Porg. But the damage and death the Porgs can cause shouldn't be understated or ignored. So, my journey began over 2 years ago in researching the Porgs for an explained video. Here I noticed something rather interesting. Porgs were a species of birds that evolved from seabirds on Batuu. This clearly establishes Batuu as their homeworld. However, this isn't the only place we see them in canon. They're also found on Batuu. So how and when did they get there? It all starts with Rey and Chewie. Upon leaving Batuu, they carried a small group of stowaway Porgs on the Millennium Falcon, including a mother nesting with Porglets. This moment here, seemingly insignificant, has a massive knock-on effect. The Porgs have entered the wider universe. Within the same year of this event, Porgs were brought to Batuu to be sold as pets in the creature stall at Blackspire Outpost. From here, it's quite safe to assume that some of the Porgs brought to Batuu managed to escape and make the planet's mountain their home. This has happened in many cases in real life, such as with goldfish, which are often taken in as pets and then released into lakes and rivers. Looking at birds, there's also the case of parakeets, which similarly were taken in as pets and then they were either released or escaped. Therefore, there's real-life precedent for imported species flourishing in new non-native habitats. From Star Wars' galaxy of creatures, we know that the Porgs on Batuu managed to thrive, with a great amount of them living together on the planet. So what, I hear you asking, is this really a problem? The answer to this question is yes. You see, I believe that Porgs are an invasive species, and that the ecosystem of Batuu may never be the same again. So what is an invasive species? According to the National Invasive Species Information Center, under the US Department of Agriculture, an invasive species is a species that is non-native or alien to the ecosystem under consideration, and whose introduction causes or is likely to cause economic or environmental harm or harm to human health. So, do Porgs fit this definition? Let's find out. First, we already know that they're not a native species to Batuu, so we can tick that box. Next, there's the question to whether they're likely to cause economic harm. I would say this is a big yes. The video, Blackspire Outpost, from Star Wars Galaxy of Adventures, hints to this, with a singular Porg flying around many places in Blackspire Outpost, before flying headfirst towards some meat cooking over a fire. Fortunately, Chewie stopped him from getting to, and ruining the meat, and potentially killing himself. Imagine though, if there was a whole flock flying through Blackspire Outpost. They'd definitely cause problems. Additionally, we've also seen their destructive and disruptive nature on their homeworld of Batuu. In one case, a Porg stole Rey's lightsaber, even managing to briefly turn it on, and in another case, a couple of Porgs ripped wires out of the Millennium Falcon for a nest. These stories show how Porgs love to steal things, and I think it's particularly concerning that they're willing to rip wiring apart. I think this could be a particular problem on Batuu, because I don't think they'd have access to the blue moss they usually use for their nests, rather than wires. Okay, so Porgs cause economic harm, but what about environmental harm? This one is a bit harder to look for, but I'd say that Porgs do damage the environment. For this, we need to look at ecosystems and food chains. According to National Geographic, an ecosystem is a geographic area where plants, animals, and other organisms, as well as weather and landscapes, work together to form a bubble of life. These ecosystems are very delicate, with National Geographic also saying, every factor in an ecosystem depends on every other factor, either directly or indirectly. A change in the temperature of an ecosystem will often affect what plants will grow there, for instance. Animals that depend on plants for food and shelter will have to adapt to the changes, move to another ecosystem, or perish. So, if we were to introduce porgs into the ecosystems of Batuu, how would this affect the balance? This is where food chains come in. National Geographic says, the food chain describes who eats whom in the wild. Every living thing, from one-celled algae to giant blue whales, needs food to survive. Each food chain is a possible pathway that energy and nutrients can follow through the ecosystem. To put it simply, a food chain is a diagram of what eats what in an ecosystem. Food chains are important in this discussion, as the introduction of another animal could have a big effect. For example, an introduced animal may have no predators. The case study of the brown tree snake, which can be found on the US Department of State website, details the issues here. In the 1940s, the brown tree snake was accidentally introduced into Guam, where they had no natural predators, and the native animals hadn't developed any protective behavior from snakes. This led to the population of snakes growing quickly, to the point of 30,000 per square mile, and 9 of the 11 native bird species of Guam being eliminated. So, are porgs like these snakes? Fortunately not. Porgs actually do have a predator on Batuu, in the form of the Batuuan bragger bear, the apex predator of the planet. However, this doesn't mean they're innocent. Take the grey squirrel, for example. First introduced to England in 1876 as an ornamental species to populate the ground of stately homes, grey squirrels have spread across the country. According to The Grey Menace by Andy Wiseman from the Squirrel magazine, Spring 2016, they are damaging to the environment in many ways. One way is through stripping bark on many species of trees, such as beech, poplar, sweet chestnut, and oak, which may, as a result, be lost from the mature woodland canopy, resulting in a loss of associated fungi, invertebrates, and their predators. Another is by eating songbird chicks and eggs, which has reportedly led to fledgling rates dropping by an average rate of 15%. They can also damage maize and fruit crops. As well as this, they have had a negative impact on the native red squirrel species, outcompeting them for food and habitat, and by carrying a lethal squirrel pox, which it's immune to, but the red squirrel isn't. This case makes it clear how a small cute animal can cause a lot of environmental harm. I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that the introduction of porgs would be similar, with porgs competing with native species for food such as fish, reducing populations of the fish and the competing species, and who knows what diseases these birds carry. The fact that porgs appear to have adapted quite easily and quickly to Batuu, with Star Wars Galaxy of Creatures choosing Batuu as the location to show off the species and depicting a large amount of them, shows that porgs aren't going anywhere, and therefore the consequences of their presence will be realised. Finally, there's the question of whether porgs harm human health, or in this case, I'm going to include all sentient species. Although actually, for this one, I think that the porgs are in a way quite innocent. I don't see porgs actually directly harming people, with the porgs of Batuu not being particularly violent. However, I would like to remind you that if their wire-ripping habits carry over to Batuu, then they could cause a lot of harm indirectly. Just imagine you're a pilot. You fly into space and suddenly your ship powers off. You find that a Porg has destroyed the mechanics of your ship and are now stranded. Not a good thought, is it? But anyway, even if the Porgs cause no harm to sentient species, they already fulfill the criteria of being an invasive species from either the economic damage or environmental damage alone. I'd also like to draw your attention again to the grey squirrels, which are listed in the IUCN International List of 100 worst invasive non-native species, despite also not harming humans. Therefore, Porgs are damaging pests, which have brought so much harm and death to Batuu. So, is it too late? Can the Porgs be removed? The answer is maybe, but it'll take a lot of effort and cost a lot. If possible, the Batuans could infect the Porgs with a virus only the Porgs would suffer from, but that relies on there being a virus which can do this, which there is no evidence for or against in canon. Then there's the idea of introducing another species to hunt the Porgs, but then there's the possible consequences of this other species to deal with. There's also the option to send people to hunt the Porgs themselves and destroy any nests, but I'm not sure this would be a particularly easy option, bearing in mind that Porgs are a cliff-dwelling species, so reaching their nests would likely be difficult and would require entering the mountains. So yeah, let's just say, in my opinion, if they want to get rid of the Porgs, the Death Star is the best option. These Porgs aren't looking so cute anymore now, are they? Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed seeing the harm of the plague which is the Porgs. But hey, that's just a theory, and we hope to see you later at VIII Holocron.